Blood trickled down Master Sergeant Marcus Daniels' face as transit officers pinned him against the cold marble wall. His military ID lay ignored on the floor. Through the crowd of uniformed officers, Lieutenant Amara Washington locked eyes with him. Her radio crackled. "Stand down immediately, you've got the wrong man." Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe. Everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of skin color. What would you do if you witnessed this scene unfolding at your local train station? Master Sergeant Marcus Daniels stepped off the Amtrak train into Chicago's Union Station, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. After 15 years of distinguished military service and a grueling 8-month deployment in the Middle East, all he wanted was to catch his connecting train to Detroit and finally embrace his waiting family. The massive station teemed with travelers, their movements slowed by the severe snowstorm that had blanketed the Midwest in white. Marcus adjusted his civilian clothes, a simple black sweater and jeans that felt strange after months in uniform, and hefted his military backpack higher on his shoulder. The station's marble floors gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights as he navigated through the crowd, checking the departures board to confirm his 40-minute layover. A woman's scream pierced the general murmur of the station, cutting through Marcus's travel fog. "My purse! Stop him!" Without hesitation, his military training kicked in. He spotted a young man shoving past travelers, clutching a red handbag. Marcus calculated the trajectory, dropped his backpack and sprinted through an opening in the crowd. Years of combat training had honed his reflexes, and he executed a perfect tackle, bringing the thief down with minimal force while protecting surrounding civilians. "Stay down," Marcus commanded in his authoritative military voice, holding the struggling young man with a practiced restraint. "Someone call security." The woman whose purse had been snatched approached cautiously, gratitude and relief washing over her face. Thank you so much." The commotion attracted the attention of 4 transit police officers patrolling the station. Officer Richard Brentwood, a stocky white man with 17 years on the force and a reputation among his colleagues for old-school policing, led the group. "Police! Everyone back up!" Brentwood shouted, his hand hovering near his weapon as his eyes darted between Marcus and the thief. Without assessing the situation or questioning witnesses, Brentwood immediately focused on Marcus. "How get off him and put your hands where I can see them." Confused but conditioned to respect authority, Marcus began to comply. "Officer, I caught this man stealing her purse," he explained calmly, nodding toward the elderly woman who now clutched her recovered property. Brentwood ignored his explanation and the woman's attempted intervention. Instead, he roughly pulled Marcus away while his colleagues secured the actual thief. "Sure you did." "And I'm the president," Brentwood muttered, shoving Marcus against the nearest wall with unnecessary force. "Spread 'em!" Stunned by this treatment, Marcus nevertheless maintained his military discipline. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Master Sergeant Marcus Daniels, United States Army. My ID is in my back pocket." The officer snorted derisively as he patted Marcus down with excessive thoroughness. "Right. And I'm the Queen of England." When Brentwood found Marcus's military identification, he barely glanced at it before tossing it to the floor. "Nice fake. Where'd you get this made?" The situation escalated as Marcus's military backpack was roughly searched, his personal belongings scattered across the station floor. The growing crowd of onlookers began pulling out phones, recording the incident from multiple angles. Some shouted in protest, while others hurled accusations, creating a chaotic atmosphere. "He was helping that lady," a college student yelled, her phone held high to capture the scene. "No, I saw him running with something in his hands," countered an older man in a business suit. Throughout the deteriorating situation, Marcus maintained remarkable composure, repeatedly requesting proper procedure. "Officer, please verify my identification. Call my commanding officer if necessary. I'm simply trying to catch a train to Detroit for a medal ceremony." Brentwood leaned in close, his breath hot against Marcus's ear. "Listen here, boy. I don't care what kind of costume party you're headed to. I've dealt with your type before." The slur was spoken just quietly enough that it wouldn't register on body cameras, but loud enough for Marcus to hear the hatred behind it. "If you don't stop resisting, I'll add that to the charges." Marcus hadn't moved a muscle. "I'm not resisting, sir." Two more officers joined Brentwood, forming a human barrier that separated Marcus from the witnesses who could exonerate him. The actual purse thief, a young white man with a history of similar offenses, was being questioned with notably less aggression at the other end of the hall. As the situation reached a boiling point, Lieutenant Amara Washington pushed through the station doors, immediately assessing the tense standoff. A 15-year veteran with an impeccable record, Washington had been called by dispatch about a disturbance, but not given details. The click of handcuffs around Marcus's wrists echoed in his ears as bystanders shouted contradicting accounts of what had transpired, some defending him vehemently, while others reinforced the officer's mistaken assumptions. Blood from a small cut above his eyebrow, sustained when Brentwood had shoved him against the wall, trickled down his face as he locked eyes with the newly arrived lieutenant. Lieutenant Amara Washington took command of the scene with practiced authority, her keen eyes sweeping over the chaotic tableau before her. "Officer Brentwood, situation report, now." Brentwood straightened his posture slightly, but maintained his grip on Marcus's arm. "Lieutenant, we responded to a disturbance and found this perpetrator attacking a civilian. When we intervened, he became combative and claimed to be military." Washington's gaze shifted to Marcus, noting his controlled breathing and disciplined stance despite the handcuffs and the blood on his face. "And the victim?" Brentwood gestured vaguely toward the other officers. "Being interviewed over there. Typical snatch and grab until this one decided to play hero." Something about the scene didn't add up to Washington. The crowd's energy felt wrong for a simple theft intervention. Too many people were shouting contradictory information, and the man in handcuffs displayed none of the typical behaviors of guilt. "Anyone else witness what happened?" she asked, addressing the crowd directly. Several hands shot up immediately. An elderly woman pushed forward, her recovered red purse clutched tightly to her chest. "I did. This gentleman," she pointed to Marcus, "stopped the young man who stole my purse. These officers have the wrong person." Washington turned to Brentwood, whose face had reddened slightly. "Is this true?" Before he could formulate a response, Washington spotted the military ID on the floor. She picked it up, examining it with practiced eyes that had reviewed thousands of identification documents during her career. "Master Sergeant Marcus Daniels, Special Forces. This appears authentic, Officer Brentwood." She turned to her subordinate. "Why is this on the ground?" Brentwood shifted uncomfortably. "Could be fake. Lots of these guys walking around pretending to be military." Washington's expression hardened as she pulled out her department-issued tablet. "Body camera footage. Now." Within moments, she was reviewing the officer's initial approach, the audio clearly capturing Marcus's calm explanations and Brentwood's dismissive responses. The footage showed no resistance, no aggression from Marcus, only a textbook example of professional conduct in the face of escalating hostility. Washington's decision was immediate and unequivocal. "Remove those handcuffs now." When Brentwood hesitated, she added, "That's an order, officer." As the cuffs were reluctantly removed, Washington called for medical assistance to tend to Marcus's facial laceration. "Master Sergeant Daniels, I apologize for this incident. Would you be willing to provide a statement?" Marcus rubbed his wrists, relief washing over his features. "Yes, ma'am. I was simply catching a connecting train to Detroit for a medal ceremony. Tomorrow. Distinguished Service Cross." Washington nodded respectfully, understanding the significance of the military's second highest honor for extraordinary heroism. Meanwhile, she noticed a notification on her tablet. "Officer Richard Brentwood, 7 civilian complaints for excessive force in the past 3 years, 5 specifically mentioning racial profiling, all dismissed without action." The Transit Authority. Chief, alerted to the developing situation by dispatch, arrived breathless and clearly concerned about public relations. Middle-aged and politically savvy, Chief Raymond Sullivan took in the scene with a practiced eye, wincing at the number of recording devices pointed in their direction. "Lieutenant Washington, let's move this someplace more private," he suggested, plastering on a camera-ready smile. Marcus's mind flashed to previous incidents throughout his military career. The time he was followed by military police around the base perimeter until he produced ID, the occasions when new recruits questioned his authority despite his rank insignia. The housing agent who claimed all units were suddenly unavailable when he arrived for a viewing. Each time, he had swallowed his anger, focused on his mission, maintained his professionalism, each time except now. "With respect, sir," Marcus addressed the chief directly, "I believe transparency is essential here. I've spent 15 years serving this country, including 3 combat tours. I would appreciate the same respect from your officers that I've earned in uniform." Sullivan's smile faltered as he calculated the public relations mathematics of the situation. Washington seized the opportunity to establish procedural correctness. "Chief, I've reviewed the body camera footage. There were clear violations of department policy here. Master Sergeant Daniels identified himself properly and offered no resistance." As they spoke, the hashtag #wrongful detention was already trending, locally as video clips spread across social media platforms. One particularly damning angle captured Brentwood's aggressive takedown and dismissal of Marcus's military ID. The chief's phone buzzed incessantly with messages from City Hall. "Lieutenant Washington, please escort Master Sergeant Daniels to my office for a formal statement," Sullivan directed, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Officer Brentwood, remain available for questioning." As Marcus collected his scattered belongings, Lieutenant Washington noticed her superior officers already huddling, undoubtedly discussing damage control strategies. She had seen this pattern before: incident, outrage, promises, inaction. The cycle seemed unbreakable from within the system. Marcus stepped away briefly, phone pressed to his ear. "Colonel Williams, this is Master Sergeant Daniels. Sir, there's been an incident at Chicago Union Station." His voice was steady, his report precise and factual, betraying none of the emotion churning beneath his professional exterior. As news vans began arriving outside the station, Marcus realized his connecting train to Detroit had long since departed. His family would be waiting at the station, unaware that their reunion would be delayed by an encounter that would change not only his life, but potentially the entire Chicago Transit Police Department. The story exploded across national news outlets and social media platforms with unprecedented speed. "Black military hero mistaken for thief," screamed the CNN Chiron, as aerial footage showed Chicago's Union Station surrounded by news vans and protesters merely 3 hours after the incident. Inside a sterile hospital examination room, Marcus watched the coverage on a wall-mounted television, his facial laceration freshly stitched and his shoulder wrapped in a compression bandage. The doctor had diagnosed a mild sprain from when Officer Brentwood had wrenched his arm behind his back. "Our top story tonight," the anchor announced gravely. "Decorated Army Special Forces Master Sergeant Marcus Daniels was wrongfully detained and injured by Chicago Transit Police after helping recover a stolen purse. Daniels, scheduled to receive the Distinguished Service Cross tomorrow, was repeatedly ignored when he identified himself as military personnel." The screen split to show Marcus's official military portrait alongside blurry cell phone footage of his detention. His combat record scrolled beneath the images: 3 tours of duty, multiple commendations for bravery under fire, leadership roles in highly classified operations. The contrast between his service and his treatment could not have been more stark. A retired general appeared as an expert commentator, outrage evident in his rigid posture. "This man has bled for his country. The disrespect shown to him is unconscionable and, frankly, un-American." Simultaneously, Officer Brentwood's professional history began circulating online, leaked by someone within the department. Anonymous police message boards filled with debates, some officers defending Brentwood, while others condemned his actions. 7 previous civilian complaints for excessive force, 5 specifically mentioning racial profiling, all dismissed without action. The hospital room door opened, admitting Marcus's parents, sister, and 2 nephews who had driven down from Detroit upon hearing the news. His mother's eyes brimmed with tears as she embraced him carefully. "My boy," she whispered, touching his face gently beside the bandage, always trying to help others. His father, a Vietnam veteran, stood stiffly by the bed, rage and pride warring in his expression. "Son, this isn't right." The Chicago Transit Authority issued a statement that did little to calm the growing outrage. "We are investigating an incident involving transit police officers and a member of the military. We take all allegations of misconduct seriously and are reviewing the matter thoroughly." No mention of Marcus by name, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no apology. The carefully crafted non-statement only fueled public indignation. Army representatives arrived at the hospital, concern etched in their features. Major Jessica Rivera, the public affairs officer assigned to the case, spoke quietly with Marcus. "Master Sergeant, the Secretary of the Army has been briefed on this situation. Your medal ceremony has been rescheduled, and we're preparing a statement of support." She hesitated. "There's also considerable interest from the media in your story. How would you like to proceed?" Before Marcus could respond, his phone chimed with a message from an unexpected source, Lieutenant Amara Washington. "Transit Police Union making statement soon, claiming you were aggressive and didn't properly identify yourself. I have the body, cam footage that proves otherwise. Your call." Outside the hospital, the situation continued to escalate. Veterans groups organized an impromptu demonstration, many in uniform with signs reading, "Respect our soldiers" and "Accountability now." Social media amplified their message, with military members across the country posting their own experiences with racial profiling alongside the hashtag #IStandWithMarcus. The Transit Police Union held a hasty press conference, its president sweating under the harsh lights. "Our officers responded to a physical altercation in a crowded public space. They acted according to protocol to secure the scene. If there were miscommunications, we regret them. But we stand by our officers who make split-second decisions to protect the public." Minutes later, a local news station broadcast the complete body camera footage, which clearly showed Marcus calmly identifying himself multiple times, while Brentwood dismissed his military ID without verification. The footage captured Brentwood's muttered "boy" comment, sending shockwaves through viewers nationwide. The contradiction between the union's statement and the video evidence was glaring. Marcus watched it all unfold from his hospital bed, overwhelmed by the attention yet increasingly convinced that this moment required him to take a stand. For years he had channeled his experiences with discrimination into serving his country with distinction, believing excellence was the best response to prejudice. Now he found himself at the center of a national conversation about race, respect, and accountability. Lieutenant Washington faced her own challenges back at headquarters. Fellow officers passed her desk without acknowledging her presence. Her locker had been vandalized with the word "traitor" scratched into the metal. The thin blue line she was discovering became razor-sharp when it divided those within the ranks. During a tense briefing, a senior officer made the department's position clear. "Washington, you've put us all in danger by feeding this media circus." She responded coolly, "With respect, sir, the danger came from violating our oath to protect and serve all citizens equally." City politicians scrambled to position themselves advantageously as public opinion crystallized. The mayor, facing re-election in 6 months, called for a thorough investigation, while carefully avoiding any language that might alienate police voters. Aldermen from predominantly black districts demanded immediate action, while those from areas with high concentrations of police families urged careful consideration of all facts. As Marcus considered his next steps, his phone rang with an unknown number. "Master Sergeant Daniels, this is Benjamin Mitchell, civil rights attorney. I believe your case represents a critical opportunity to address systemic issues within the Chicago Transit Police. I'd like to offer my services, pro bono if necessary." The call ended just as CNN switched to breaking news. Officer Richard Brentwood, the transit police officer at the center of the wrongful detention controversy, has previously been named in 7 civilian complaints alleging excessive force and racial bias, according to department records. None resulted in disciplinary action. Do you believe this incident would have unfolded differently if Marcus wasn't black? Comment number 1 if you think race played a significant role, or number 2 if you believe this could happen to anyone. Hit that like button if you support our military personnel, and subscribe to follow Marcus's fight for justice. How would you respond if you were in Marcus's position right now? Would you accept the attorney's offer and pursue legal action, or try to put this behind you and focus on your military career? The next part of this story reveals Marcus's decision and the unexpected consequences that followed. The hospital discharge papers crinkled in Marcus's hand as he stepped into the frigid Chicago morning. Despite the doctor's recommendation for rest, a dull throbbing persisted in his shoulder and the stitches above his eye pulled uncomfortably with each facial expression. The physical pain, however, paled in comparison to the emotional turmoil that had invaded his typically disciplined mind. As a cab carried him to the modest hotel arranged by the Army representatives, fragmented memories surfaced without his permission. At 10 years old, being followed by a store security guard, while white children shopped unbothered. At 16, having a police officer draw his weapon during a routine traffic stop when Marcus reached for his learner's permit. During basic training, hearing a drill sergeant express surprise at his test scores because his kind usually struggled with written exams. Each memory had been filed away, compartmentalized in the interest of moving forward, focusing on the mission, being twice as good to receive half the recognition. Now, these carefully stored incidents burst from their mental containers, demanding acknowledgement. His parents and sister had returned to their hotel after spending hours at his bedside. Their opinions on his path forward diverged significantly. His mother, ever protective, urged caution. "Marcus, you've worked so hard for your career. This medal means everything. Don't let them take that from you too." His father, shaped by different battles in a different era, counseled pragmatism. "Son, you can't fight the whole system. Take whatever settlement they offer and move on with dignity." His sister, the family activist, pushed for confrontation. "If not you, then who? You have the platform now. Use it." Their conflicting advice echoed in his mind as he checked into his room, nodding politely at the desk clerk who clearly recognized him from the news. His phone had accumulated hundreds of notifications, messages from fellow soldiers, childhood friends, distant relatives, and complete strangers. The Army had assigned a media relations specialist who forwarded interview requests from every major network and publication. Marcus silenced the device and placed it face down on the nightstand. Across town, Lieutenant Amara Washington faced her own crucible. Summoned to the chief's office, she stood at attention while Sullivan paced behind his desk. "Do you understand what you've done, Lieutenant? You've undermined the entire department." Washington maintained her professional demeanor. "Sir, I upheld our oath and department policy. The body camera footage speaks for itself." Sullivan slammed his palm on the desk. "You should have handled this internally. Now we've got the mayor's office breathing down our necks, protesters at our doorstep, and officers afraid to do their jobs for fear of ending up on the evening news." He pointed to a chair. "Effective immediately. You're on administrative duty, pending a full investigation of your conduct." Washington accepted the assignment without visible reaction, though inside her resolve hardened. Her thoughts turned to her 13-year-old daughter Zoe, who had texted from school. "Mom, kids are saying you betrayed the police. Is it true? Jeremy's dad is a cop and he told everyone you're a traitor." The personal cost was mounting by the hour. Back in his hotel room, Marcus discovered an envelope that had been slipped under his door. Inside, he found printouts of social media posts containing his home address near Fort Bragg, along with explicit threats. Similar messages had flooded his email and social media accounts, interspersed with overwhelming support from veterans and civilians alike. The dichotomy reflected the nation's broader divisions, now focused through the lens of his experience. Meanwhile, Officer Brentwood had been suspended with pay, a standard procedure that felt wholly inadequate to many observers. His police union arranged interviews with sympathetic media outlets, where he portrayed himself as a dedicated officer, doing his job in a dangerous situation. "I couldn't know he was military just by looking at him," Brentwood insisted during a Fox News segment. "We get people impersonating authority figures all the time. This is about procedure, not race." The Transit Authority executives convened an emergency meeting with city officials, marketing consultants, and legal advisors. Tourism represented billions in annual revenue for Chicago, and the viral videos threatened the city's image. The discussion centered not on addressing the underlying issues but on containing the public relations disaster. "We need to settle this quickly and quietly," advised the lead counsel. "Full admission of wrongdoing opens us to significant liability." Across town, Colonel James Williams, Marcus's commanding officer, arrived at the hotel. A decorated combat veteran himself, Williams had mentored Marcus through multiple deployments and recommended him for the Distinguished Service Cross. Their meeting was direct, soldier to soldier. "The Pentagon is concerned about the optics, Marcus. They're offering to fast-track your medal ceremony, provide a generous relocation allowance, and assign you to the War College faculty. All they ask is that you accept the city's apology and sign their settlement agreement." Marcus studied his superior officer's face. "Is that an order, sir?" Williams sighed. "No, it's not, but it's strongly advised. Your military career has tremendous potential. The Army wants to protect that." The implicit message was clear. Pursue this, and doors would close regardless of his service record. That evening, seeking guidance beyond the military and legal realms, Marcus visited Trinity Baptist Church, a historic black congregation in Chicago's South Side. The pastor welcomed him warmly, but the congregation members were divided. Some urged Christian forgiveness and moving forward, while others invoked the religious duty to pursue justice. An elderly deacon who had marched with Dr. King offered perspective. "Son, sometimes God puts you in a position to help others. The question isn't what's easiest for you, but what's needed for those who'll come after." As Marcus contemplated these words, Lieutenant Washington was conducting her own investigation. Relegated to administrative duty, she used her database access to review similar incidents involving the transit police. A pattern emerged: officers with multiple complaints concentrated in certain teams, supervised by lieutenants who consistently dismissed civilian allegations. The systemic nature of the problem became increasingly apparent. Washington compiled the data meticulously, knowing this unauthorized investigation could end her career, but unable to ignore the evidence before her. The next morning, Marcus and Washington met at a small coffee shop far from police headquarters and media hotspots. Both had arrived in civilian clothes, taking precautions to avoid being recognized. "I have something you should see," Washington said quietly, sliding a thumb drive across the table. 17 similar incidents in the past 2 years, 3 involving military personnel, all handled the same way: complaints filed, evidence minimized, cases closed. Marcus studied her face, recognizing the risk she was taking. "Why are you doing this? You have more to lose than I do." Washington stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "I joined the force to protect people, all people. If I stay silent now, I'm part of the problem." She hesitated. "My daughter asked me if I betrayed the police. I told her I could never betray my oath or my conscience." Their eyes met in silent understanding. 2 public servants from different institutions, both confronting the gap between their organization's stated values and operational realities. Both weighing personal costs against principles, both recognizing that this moment demanded difficult choices. "I've decided to file a formal complaint," Marcus said finally. "Not just for me, but for everyone this has happened to without cameras present." Washington nodded. "Then you'll need what's on that drive. Just know they'll come after you with everything they have. They'll dig through your past, question your character, try to make this about anything except the real issue." Marcus thought of his spotless military record, his commendations, his sacrifice. Then he thought of the young black men and women without such credentials to shield them. "Let them try," he said quietly. "Some battles choose the soldier." The conference room of Mitchell & Associates law firm buzzed with purposeful energy as Marcus formally retained Benjamin Mitchell as his attorney. The decision had not come easily, but after reviewing the evidence Lieutenant Washington had provided, Marcus recognized that this case transcended his personal experience. "We're filing both a formal complaint with the Chicago Police Department's Internal Affairs Division and a federal civil rights lawsuit," Mitchell explained, his fingers dancing across his laptop keyboard. The body camera footage provides irrefutable evidence of procedural violations, and Lieutenant Washington's data establishes a pattern of similar incidents. Within hours of filing, Marcus's hotel phone rang. The caller identified himself as Gregory Patterson, legal representative for the Chicago Transit Authority. Master Sergeant Daniels, the city of Chicago deeply regrets this unfortunate incident and wishes to resolve the matter expeditiously. We're prepared to offer a settlement of $500,000 with the understanding that all parties would sign a standard non-disclosure agreement. The amount was substantial, enough to secure Marcus's financial future beyond his military pension. The conditions, however, were unacceptable. "Mr. Patterson, this isn't about money," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "This is about accountability and preventing similar incidents in the future. Any resolution must include departmental reforms and officer accountability measures." Patterson's tone cooled noticeably. "That's beyond the scope of an individual settlement. I strongly encourage you to discuss this with your attorney before making decisions you might regret." The implicit threat hung in the air as the call ended. Marcus's military superiors were less subtle. His squadron commander called directly, "The Pentagon is concerned about your involvement in a civilian lawsuit while on active duty. There's talk of reassignment to Fort Wainwright in Alaska pending. Review of your security clearance." Fort Wainwright, known for its isolation and brutal winters, represented a clear message about the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Washington faced her own internal affairs investigation. The official reasons cited her unauthorized sharing of confidential department information, though everyone understood the real issue was her breaking ranks. The investigating officer, a 27-year veteran who had never sustained a complaint against a fellow officer, made his bias clear. "Lieutenant, your priority should have been protecting the department's reputation, not undermining it." Washington stood her ground. "My priority was upholding the law and department policy, which clearly states officers must verify identification before detention." Outside police headquarters, Chicago's community leaders organized. The Reverend Calvin Turner, a prominent civil rights activist, led a solidarity march through downtown Chicago that drew thousands. "This isn't just about one soldier," Turner declared to the assembled crowd. "This is about a system that sees black skin as inherently suspicious, inherently criminal. We demand reform, not just apologies." Counter-protesters gathered across the street, many wearing blue ribbons and carrying signs supporting the transit police. "Cops keep us safe and back the blue" messages competed with "Justice for Marcus" and "Reform Now" signs from the main demonstration. The city's fault lines became increasingly visible as the controversy intensified. The situation escalated further when the United States Department of Justice announced a civil rights investigation into the Chicago Transit Police Department. The incident involving Master Sergeant Daniels raises serious concerns about departmental policies and practices, the Attorney General stated in a press release. "This investigation will examine whether there exists a pattern or practice of constitutional violations." The City Council chambers overflowed during an emergency hearing on police oversight. Marcus testified with military precision, recounting the incident without embellishment, while connecting it to the broader pattern revealed by Washington's data. "This isn't about one officer or one incident," he concluded. "This is about a system that protects those who abuse their authority while dismissing the experiences of those they're sworn to serve." His testimony drew applause from the gallery, quickly silenced by the council president's gavel. The following day, Lieutenant Washington faced her termination hearing. Despite the recommendation for dismissal, she defended her actions with unwavering conviction. "If upholding my oath to protect constitutional rights means losing my badge, then the badge has lost its meaning," she told the police board. "I became an officer to serve justice, not to participate in its perversion." Her testimony resonated beyond the hearing room, inspiring a contingent of younger officers to speak out about the culture of silence they had encountered. Despite the professional turmoil, Marcus traveled to Detroit for his rescheduled medal ceremony. The Distinguished Service Cross was presented with full military honors, recognizing his extraordinary heroism during a classified operation that had saved dozens of American lives. During his acceptance speech, Marcus addressed the elephant in the room. True service means standing up for the values we claim to defend, both abroad and at home. Justice isn't just a concept we export to other countries. It must be the foundation of our own society. His words, broadcast nationally, transformed what might have been a standard military ceremony into a powerful statement on citizenship and accountability. While Marcus received his long-deserved recognition, the Chicago Transit Police Chief announced his retirement, citing the current political climate that made proper policing impossible. He blamed media sensationalism and political pressure, rather than acknowledging the documented pattern of discriminatory practices within his department. The announcement came just hours before investigative journalists published evidence of coordination between the Transit Police Union and certain city officials to systematically bury civilian complaints. Emails obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests revealed a deliberate process for discrediting complainants, particularly those from minority communities. As Marcus returned to his military base, the uncertainty of his future weighed heavily. Would his stand for justice end the career he had built over 15 years of dedicated service? Would the system he challenged ultimately exact its revenge? Or would his actions help catalyze the changes needed to align American practices with American ideals? The answers remained elusive, but Marcus had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. He had chosen to be not just a soldier for his country, but a champion for its conscience. The official email arrived in Marcus's inbox with innocuous bureaucratic language that barely concealed its punitive intent. Pursuant to Army Regulation 623-3, a special performance review has been initiated to assess Master Sergeant Daniels's suitability for continued service in his current capacity. Marcus read the message twice in his barracks office, understanding its true meaning immediately. After 15 years of exemplary evaluations, this special review materialized only after he had filed his lawsuit against the Chicago Transit Police. The timing was hardly coincidental. His phone buzzed with a text from Lieutenant Washington, suspended without pay, appeal denied, maintaining the fight. In 3 weeks, Washington had gone from respected police supervisor to departmental pariah, her career in freefall. Her latest mortgage statement, highlighted in alarming red, indicated that without her regular income, she had approximately 45 days before foreclosure proceedings would begin. Across town, Officer Brentwood returned to police headquarters, greeted by supportive colleagues who had arranged a small welcome-back gathering complete with thin blue line cookies and congratulatory cards. Though assigned to administrative duty pending the outcome of the investigation, his reinstatement represented a symbolic victory for those who viewed the controversy as an attack on policing itself. Brentwood gave interviews to conservative media outlets, portraying himself as a victim of cancel culture and anti-police sentiment. "I was just doing my job," he repeated in each appearance. "Now my family receives death threats because I'm being painted as some kind of racist." The retaliation extended beyond official channels. Marcus discovered his military service records had been leaked online, including sensitive information about his deployments that potentially compromised operational security. Anonymous users on police-affiliated message boards shared his home address near Fort Bragg, details about his family members, and thinly veiled threats. "Maybe this hero needs to learn what happens to people who make enemies of those who protect society," wrote one user with the handle TrueBlue88. Lieutenant Washington faced more immediate intimidation. Returning home from a grocery run, she noticed an unmarked police cruiser parked across from her house. The vehicle followed her on errands for 3 consecutive days. When she reported this surveillance to Internal Affairs, she was told there was no official operation involving her, the implication being that her former colleagues were monitoring her unofficially. The targeting extended to family members. Marcus's younger brother, Devon, a college student with no criminal record, was pulled over 3 times in 1 week for minor traffic violations. During the 3rd stop, the officer mentioned casually, "You're related to that soldier causing all the trouble, aren't you? Must be hard having such a troublemaker in the family." Devon recorded the interaction on his phone, adding to the growing evidence of coordinated harassment. As public interest in the case intensified, the Transit Police Department attempted to undermine the credibility of witnesses who had supported Marcus's account. The elderly woman whose purse had been recovered was visited by officers who suggested her memory might be confused due to the trauma of the theft. A college student who had recorded the incident found herself being investigated for an unrelated noise complaint from months earlier. Marcus faced challenges on the military front as well. His commanding officer reluctantly informed him that an investigation had been opened into allegations of conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman based on his public statements about law enforcement. Though technically a non-commissioned officer rather than an officer, the arcane regulation could still be applied to his case. "They're fishing, Marcus," Colonel Williams said quietly. "Watch your step, especially online." The warning came too late. Marcus discovered his social media accounts had been compromised, with inflammatory messages posted under his name, criticizing police, military leadership, and government officials. Though quickly deleted, screenshots circulated widely before he could regain control of his accounts. The cybersecurity team that investigated concluded the hack originated from Chicago but could not identify specific perpetrators. Public support for Marcus remained strong, particularly after investigative journalist Sofia Rodriguez published an exposé in the Washington Post detailing the systematic retaliation against him and others involved in the case. Rodriguez had tracked down 5 previous complainants against the transit police who described similar patterns of harassment following their complaints. "What we're seeing is a coordinated effort to silence those who challenge police misconduct," Rodriguez wrote. "The message is clear. Speak up, and we will destroy your life." The article galvanized community support for Washington, who faced eviction as her financial resources dwindled. A GoFundMe campaign organized by fellow officers who supported her stance raised enough to cover her mortgage for 6 months, demonstrating that the thin blue line had fractures within its ranks. The pressure began affecting Marcus physically and psychologically. During a routine medical examination, the Army doctor noted elevated blood pressure, insomnia, and hypervigilance consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. "Have you been experiencing flashbacks or intrusive thoughts?" the doctor asked, reviewing Marcus's charts. Marcus hesitated before admitting that he had begun having nightmares about both combat experiences and the incident at Union Station, the 2 traumas now intertwined in his subconscious. The diagnosis raised questions about his fitness for continued duty, potentially ending his military career, regardless of the lawsuit's outcome. As the Department of Justice investigation expanded to include allegations of witness intimidation, Marcus contemplated withdrawing his complaint. During a late-night call with Attorney Mitchell, he voiced his growing doubts. "They're coming after my family, my career, everything I've built. Maybe I should just walk away." Mitchell listened patiently before responding. "That's exactly what they want, Marcus. This scorched earth response proves how much they fear actual accountability. If you back down now, the message is clear. Break the rules, then break anyone who complains." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent text from Lieutenant Washington. "Found something on Brentwood's laptop. Call ASAP." Washington had been assisting the honest internal affairs detective who had taken a professional risk by thoroughly investigating the case. During their review of devices seized as evidence, they discovered emails on Brentwood's department laptop, detailing what appeared to be a coordinated retaliation strategy, with directives coming from high within the department. "They called it Operation Firewall," Washington explained when Marcus called. "It's a playbook for discrediting complainants, especially minorities, and especially those with military backgrounds. There are at least 20 cases documented where they used these tactics." The discovery represented a potential turning point, evidence that could transform individual complaints into a case of systemic corruption, but it also significantly raised the stakes. If those behind Operation Firewall learned that their documentation had been discovered, how far would they go to protect themselves? Do you think Marcus should continue his fight against this system, despite the increasing personal costs? Comment number 1, if you believe the truth must come out regardless of consequences. Or number 2, if you think he should prioritize his safety and career. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed or experienced retaliation for speaking truth to power, and subscribe to see how Marcus and Lieutenant Washington use this explosive new evidence. The stakes have never been higher, but the question remains: can one soldier and one police officer really change an entrenched system of power and privilege? The next part reveals how Marcus builds an unlikely alliance to take on the entire corrupt structure. The secure conference room inside Benjamin Mitchell's law office buzzed with purposeful energy as Marcus convened an unprecedented coalition. Seated around the polished oak table were 5 other victims of transit police discrimination who had come forward after learning of Marcus's case. A retired judge who had spent years trying to reform the system from within provided legal guidance. Lieutenant Washington and the internal affairs detective, who had become their ally within the department, contributed insider knowledge. A data analyst volunteered to process the pattern evidence. Together, they represented a formidable force against the entrenched power structure. What we're seeing isn't just individual bias, Marcus explained, standing at the head of the table with military posture. Lieutenant Washington's discovery of Operation Firewall proves this is systemic, coordinated, and deliberate. He gestured to the whiteboard where they had mapped connections between complaints, officers, supervisors, and outcomes. They have a playbook for targeting minorities, discrediting witnesses, and protecting officers regardless of misconduct. Washington nodded in agreement. The internal affairs detective investigating Brentwood found similar patterns across precincts. Officers with multiple complaints get transferred rather than disciplined. Records mysteriously disappear. Complainants face harassment until they drop their cases. The detective, who had requested anonymity due to fears of retaliation, added, "There's a quota system in certain districts. Officers are pressured to meet arrest numbers, leading to pretextual stops predominantly in minority neighborhoods." While this alliance took shape, Marcus received unexpected support from within the military. His commanding officer, who had initially advised caution, privately offered assistance. "The Pentagon's official position is neutrality," Colonel Williams explained during a secure call. "Unofficially, several generals are disturbed by your treatment. Military personnel shouldn't face discrimination in the country they defend." This behind-the-scenes support helped protect Marcus from the threatened security clearance review and transfer to Alaska. The Stand with Sergeant campaign gained momentum across military bases worldwide, with service members posting messages of solidarity. Veterans groups organized rallies in major cities, emphasizing that respect for the uniform meant nothing if the person wearing it faced discrimination based on skin color. Lieutenant Washington similarly found allies within law enforcement. 8 classmates from her police academy days formed a support network, sharing information and providing protection during her increasingly frequent testimony before oversight committees. "We joined to protect and serve," explained Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran. "What happened to Marcus Daniels dishonors the badge we wear. Reform strengthens legitimate policing." With this growing coalition, Marcus testified before the Illinois state legislature, which was considering a comprehensive police accountability bill. His testimony combined personal experience with strategic analysis, identifying specific policy failures and proposing concrete solutions. "Body cameras aren't enough if the footage can be ignored," he explained to the assembled lawmakers. "Verification. Protocols for identification must be mandatory, not discretionary. External oversight must have actual authority, not just advisory capacity." The hearing room fell silent as Marcus described his military service and contrasted it with his treatment by those ostensibly protecting the freedoms he had defended abroad. Even legislators who typically aligned with law enforcement interests found his testimony compelling and difficult to dismiss. Meanwhile, the Transit Police Union president was caught on a recording discussing strategies to undermine the investigation. "We need to control the narrative," he told fellow union officials during what he thought was a private meeting. "Find anything we can on Daniels or Washington, Everyone has skeletons. If not, create some. The recording, made by a reform-minded officer disgusted by the corruption, was anonymously delivered to Benjamin Mitchell's office and subsequently shared with federal investigators. Marcus applied his military strategic training to organizing their campaign. In combat, you identify the center of gravity, the source of enemy strength, he explained to the coalition. Here, it's the lack of accountability mechanisms and the culture of silence. That's what we target. He created a comprehensive matrix of incidents, evidence, witnesses, and outcomes, identifying patterns that individual cases missed. While this methodical approach progressed, Lieutenant Washington took an extraordinary risk. Working with the internal affairs detective and federal investigators, she agreed to wear a hidden recording device during high-level department meetings discussing the case. They speak differently when they think they're among allies, she explained to Marcus. The masks come off. The recordings captured senior officials discussing ways to discredit Washington and Marcus, bury evidence, and pressure city officials to limit the investigation's scope. One particularly damning conversation included a captain suggesting they find some dirt on the soldier boy. Everyone's got something. Marcus's military career faced its most serious threat when the reassignment to Alaska was reactivated. This time, however, intervention came from the highest levels. A four-star general who had reviewed Marcus's combat record personally contacted the Secretary of the Army. Punishing Daniels for experiencing discrimination sends exactly the wrong message to every minority service member, the general argued. If we want diversity in our fighting force, we need to stand behind our people when they face injustice. The reassignment was quietly cancelled, and Marcus received word that his security clearance review had concluded with no adverse findings. The city's reputation continued to suffer as the controversy persisted. Tourism declined, conventions cancelled bookings, and businesses cited the unresolved police issues in decisions to locate elsewhere. The economic impact finally forced the mayor to engage directly rather than delegating to subordinates. This has gone on long enough, he told his staff during a crisis meeting. Find a solution that doesn't just make this go away, but actually fixes the problem. My re-election depends on it. Marcus and Washington had anticipated this moment. Rather than focusing solely on punishment for individual officers, they had developed a comprehensive reform proposal that addressed recruitment, training, supervision, accountability, and community engagement. We're not interested in destroying the department, Marcus explained when presenting the proposal to city officials. We want to transform it into what it claims to be, a professional force that protects and serves all citizens equally. The proposal included specific, measurable objectives, mandatory review of all officers with multiple complaints, an independent civilian oversight board with disciplinary authority, revised use of force protocols, implicit bias training with regular reassessment, and transparent reporting of stops and arrests by demographic data. The document's professional presentation and evidence-based recommendations made it difficult to dismiss as radical or impractical. As pressure mounted from multiple directions, the mayor faced a political calculation. Supporting meaningful reform might alienate police unions, traditionally powerful political allies. Resisting reform might cost him business support and moderate voters crucial to his re-election. The economic arguments ultimately proved most persuasive. We cannot afford to be seen as a city where visitors might face discrimination, the mayor admitted privately to his advisors. The revenue losses are already substantial. While the political machinery slowly turned toward resolution, Marcus and Washington maintained their focus on systemic change rather than individual vendettas. Officer Brentwood is a symptom, not the disease, Marcus explained to a coalition of community organizations. Removing one officer without changing the culture and systems that shaped his behavior solves nothing. This perspective distinguished their campaign from previous reform efforts that had settled for symbolic sacrifices of individual bad apples while leaving the orchard untouched. Their strategic approach, combining legal pressure, political leverage, economic arguments, media coverage, and community mobilization, created what military strategists would call overwhelming force applied to the center of gravity. The system that had seemed impenetrable began showing cracks as various stakeholders calculated their own risks and benefits in the changing landscape. The final piece fell into place when the City Council scheduled a vote on adopting the reform package in its entirety. The measure required a simple majority of the 50 aldermen, and the count stood at 24 confirmed supporters, 22 opposed, and 4 undecided. The vote would determine whether Chicago would become a model for police reform, or another example of institutional resistance to change. The United States Department of Justice released its preliminary findings with the administrative precision of a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through years of denials and obfuscation. Our investigation has identified a pattern and practice of constitutional violations within the Chicago Transit Police Department, including but not limited to discriminatory enforcement practices, excessive use of force disproportionately affecting minority communities, systematic failure to properly investigate civilian complaints, and retaliatory actions against complainants. The dry legal language belied the report's explosive impact. Within hours of its release, federal agents arrested Officer Richard Brentwood at his suburban home, charging him with evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and violation of civil rights under color of law. The images of Brentwood being led away in handcuffs, broadcast on every local news station, sent shockwaves through the department. The blue wall of silence, seemingly impenetrable for generations, began to crumble. 3 officers came forward with sworn statements about departmental practices, including quotas for arrests in minority neighborhoods and informal rewards for officers who generated high numbers of stops and citations. One veteran sergeant testified, "We were told certain areas needed extra attention and that our performance reviews would reflect our productivity in those zones." The message was clear even if it wasn't written down. The transit police chief, who had retired hoping to escape accountability, found himself indicted for obstruction of justice after emails revealed his direct orders to purge complaint records before they could be subpoenaed. His attorney issued a terse statement that he would cooperate fully with authorities, code language that sent panic through the department's upper ranks. Lieutenant Amara Washington received the news of her reinstatement while helping her daughter with homework at their kitchen table. The official letter included not only full back pay for her suspension period, but a promotion to captain and assignment to lead the newly created Accountability and Transparency Division. Her phone immediately lit up with congratulatory messages from supporters and awkward apologies from former critics within the department. Marcus faced a different crossroads. The Pentagon offered him a prestigious position, developing diversity and inclusion protocols for special operations forces, acknowledging his unique perspective as both an elite soldier and a victim of discrimination. The role would leverage his combat experience and recent advocacy into institutional change within the military itself. Yet Marcus remained focused on seeing the Chicago reforms through to implementation, concerned that momentum might fade without continued pressure. As he weighed his options during a morning run along Lake Michigan, a black SUV accelerated toward him from a side street. Only his combat-honed reflexes allowed him to dive behind a concrete barrier as the vehicle mounted the sidewalk where he had been running seconds earlier. The SUV sped away, leaving Marcus with minor scrapes and a chilling realization. Someone wanted to silence him permanently. The assassination attempt, captured by a nearby security camera, transformed public sentiment. Even former skeptics condemned the escalation to violence against a decorated military hero. The mayor, previously calculating his political position, now appeared at a press conference with Marcus, visibly shaken. "This attack on Master Sergeant Daniels is an attack on everything our city stands for. I'm calling an emergency session of the City Council to vote on the comprehensive reform package immediately." The council chambers overflowed during the special session. Citizens lined up hours before the doors opened, determined to witness this pivotal moment. The debate was passionate, but the outcome seemed predetermined by public outrage over the assassination attempt. When the final vote tally showed 45 in favor, 5 opposed, the chamber erupted in applause. The reforms would be implemented under federal oversight, with quarterly public reporting requirements. That evening, Marcus delivered a televised address that captivated the nation. Standing at the podium in his full-dress uniform, his combat decorations visible, he spoke with the measured cadence of a natural leader. What happened to me at Union Station could have ended differently. Without Lieutenant Washington's intervention, without bystanders recording the incident, without my military credentials, I might have become another statistic, another name on a tragic list. Today's vote ensures that justice doesn't depend on such coincidences. True patriotism means holding our institutions to the highest standards, not exempting them from scrutiny. We can respect the difficult work of law enforcement while demanding accountability when that authority is misused. The speech resonated across political lines, with commentators from both conservative and progressive outlets acknowledging its unifying message. Meanwhile, within the Transit Police Department, significant changes accelerated. The union fractured. As reform-minded officers, tired of having their reputations tarnished by misconduct they hadn't committed, formed a new professional association committed to constitutional policing. Their first official act was to denounce the culture of impunity that had protected officers like Brentwood, while undermining public trust in the majority who served honorably. The military took notice of the Chicago developments. The Secretary of Defense announced a comprehensive review of discrimination within the armed forces, citing Marcus's case as evidence that even those who served the country at the highest levels could face prejudice based on race. New reporting mechanisms and accountability measures would ensure that service members facing discrimination had clear, protected channels to seek redress. After months of intense public scrutiny, Marcus finally attended the long-postponed family reunion in Detroit. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends gathered to celebrate not only his Distinguished Service Cross, but his courage in confronting systemic injustice. His nephew, a 10-year-old with dreams of military service, asked the question that brought tears to the veteran's eyes. "Uncle Marcus, are things going to be different when I grow up?" Marcus knelt to meet the boy's gaze. They already are, because enough people decided that change couldn't wait another generation. As the gathering continued inside, Marcus stepped onto the porch for a moment of quiet reflection. His phone vibrated with a message from Captain Washington. "Mayor just announced complete restructuring of transit police leadership. All new command staff required to demonstrate commitment to constitutional policing. We did it." The notification was followed by a link to the official press release, which included a surprising detail. The training facility where all officers would receive enhanced civil rights education would be named the Marcus Daniels Center for Constitutional Policing. For the first time since that fateful day at Union Station, Marcus allowed himself to fully experience the emotions he had controlled through military discipline and strategic focus. The tears that streaked his face carried the weight of not just his personal vindication, but the promise of protection for countless others who would never know his name but would benefit from his stand against injustice. 6 months transformed Chicago's approach to policing more fundamentally than the previous 50 years of incremental reforms. Marcus Daniels, now serving as Special Advisor for Diversity and Inclusion at the Pentagon, reviewed the quarterly reports from the Transit Police Department with satisfaction. The statistics told a compelling story. Civilian complaints down 40%, use of force incidents reduced by 35%, arrest disparities between racial groups narrowing significantly. The numbers represented real changes in human lives and community trust. Captain Amara Washington had transformed the new Accountability and Transparency Division from a potential public relations exercise into a powerful internal force for cultural change. Her team reviewed body camera footage proactively, rather than waiting for complaints, identifying both problematic patterns and exemplary officers whose approaches could be modeled. "We're changing the definition of good policing," she explained, during a national law enforcement conference. Metrics now include positive community interactions and problem-solving, not just arrests and citations. Officer Richard Brentwood watched these developments from a federal prison cell in Terre Haute, Indiana. His sentencing for multiple civil rights violations had sent an unmistakable message throughout law enforcement. The badge provided no immunity for constitutional violations. Several former colleagues who had participated in the retaliation campaign accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony about the department's systematic effort to discredit and intimidate complainants. Marcus channeled his experience into creating lasting institutional change. The Marcus Daniels Foundation provided legal and emotional support for veterans facing discrimination, connecting them with resources and representation. Military service shouldn't end at the airport or train station, Marcus explained during the Foundation's launch event. The respect earned through sacrifice shouldn't depend on the color of your skin. Chicago's transformation rippled outward, becoming a case study for police departments nationwide. Law enforcement agencies from Los Angeles to Boston sent representatives to study the implementation of what became known as the Chicago model of constitutional policing with robust accountability. The mayor, initially motivated by political calculation, embraced police reform as his administration's defining achievement. Chicago proves that enhancing accountability improves public safety rather than undermining it, he declared during his successful re-election campaign. When communities trust police, they partner with them to address crime. Captain Washington implemented a comprehensive body camera review program that became the gold standard nationwide. Unlike systems that only examined footage after complaints, her approach included random audits, peer review, and supervisor assessment. The camera doesn't just protect the public from misconduct, she explained to a graduating police academy class. It protects good officers from false accusations and helps everyone improve their interactions. The program identified training, needs recognized exemplary conduct, and created a culture where officers understood that transparency served their interests as well as the public's. Former adversaries evolved in surprising ways. The Transit Police Union president, who had initially fought reforms most vigorously, became an unlikely convert after witnessing improved officer morale and safety under the new system. I was wrong, he admitted during a joint appearance with Marcus at a police leadership summit. I thought accountability threatened officers, but arbitrary discipline and covering up misconduct were the real threats to our profession's integrity. His conversion inspired others who had reflexively opposed change to reconsider their positions. Marcus received congressional recognition for his courage, awarded the Civilian Service Medal in a Capitol ceremony attended by representatives from both political parties. Master Sergeant Daniels reminds us that patriotism takes many forms, the Speaker of the House declared. Sometimes it means facing enemies abroad, and sometimes it means holding our own institutions to their highest ideals. The friendship between Marcus and Captain Washington deepened through their shared commitment to lasting change. Their regular strategy sessions expanded to include dinner with their families, creating personal bonds that transcended their professional alliance. We experienced the system from different sides, Washington reflected during one such gathering. But we both wanted the same thing, justice that doesn't depend on privilege or position. The transit station where Marcus had been wrongfully detained underwent its own transformation. Renamed Integrity Plaza, during a public ceremony, the space included an educational installation about constitutional rights and civic responsibility. Interactive displays allowed visitors to learn about proper police procedures and citizens' rights during encounters with law enforcement. School groups made it a regular field trip destination, ensuring future generations understood both their rights and responsibilities in a democratic society. For Marcus personally, the most meaningful progress came through a veterans support group where he finally processed the trauma he had experienced. The military culture that valued stoicism had initially prevented him from acknowledging the psychological impact of both combat and discrimination. Strength isn't pretending you're invulnerable, he told fellow veterans. It's acknowledging wounds so they can properly heal. This personal journey informed his advocacy for enhanced mental health services for service members facing discrimination or reintegration challenges. The culmination of the reform effort came with the passage of national legislation establishing minimum standards for police accountability across jurisdictions. The Transparency in Policing Act passed with bipartisan support, setting requirements for body camera implementation, civilian oversight, and reporting of demographic data in police actions. During the signing ceremony, the President acknowledged Marcus and Washington in the audience, crediting their courage with creating the political possibility for meaningful change. On a crisp autumn morning 2 years after the Union Station incident, Marcus visited a Chicago elementary school in his full-dress uniform. The students, predominantly from minority neighborhoods historically subject to over-policing, listened raptly as he connected his military service abroad with the importance of constitutional rights at home. "The freedoms I defended in combat mean nothing if they don't apply equally to every American," he explained at their level. "Respecting authority is important, but respecting human dignity is essential." Across the auditorium, Captain Washington observed the presentation in her dress uniform, remembering their first encounter amid chaos and injustice. Their eyes met briefly in silent acknowledgement of how far they had come and how much work remained. The journey from confrontation to transformation had required courage, strategy, and perseverance, but had ultimately created a template for addressing systemic problems through principled action rather than cynical acceptance. As the students surrounded Marcus for pictures and autographs, a young girl raised her hand with the question that had driven the entire effort. "If something unfair happens to me, can I really make it better?" Marcus knelt to meet her gaze directly. "Yes," he answered with absolute conviction, "and you'll never have to do it alone." Has this story changed your perspective on how individuals can impact systemic problems? Comment below with one action you believe could make a difference in your own community. If you found Marcus and Captain Washington's journey inspiring, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and transformation. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that positive change is possible when people stand together against injustice. Thank you for joining us for this powerful true story, and remember, the systems we create are only as just as we demand them to be. Marcus Daniels's journey reveals powerful truths about justice and systemic change. First, silence perpetuates injustice. When Marcus broke his pattern of letting it go, he created opportunity for transformation. One voice of courage can inspire others to speak their truth. Second, effective change requires strategic alliance building. Marcus and Lieutenant Washington succeeded not through individual heroism, but by forming coalitions across communities, institutions, and power structures. Their approach combined legal pressure, media strategy, community organizing, and political leverage. Third, institutional change demands perseverance through retaliation. When the system fought back with threats, career sabotage, and even violence, their commitment to principles rather than personal comfort enabled them to withstand the pressure. Fourth, meaningful reform addresses systems, not just individuals. Rather than focusing solely on punishing Officer Brentwood, they targeted the policies, culture, and accountability mechanisms that enabled his behavior. Finally, transformative change happens when we connect personal experience to universal principles. Marcus linked his military service defending American ideals abroad with the fight for those same ideals at home, creating a patriotic framework for justice that transcended political divisions. The story reminds us that injustice thrives in shadows, but withers under persistent light, and that institutional transformation begins with individual courage, multiplied through strategic collective action. Has there been a moment in your life when you had to decide between speaking up or staying silent about an injustice? Share your experience in the comments below. If Marcus's courage to challenge a broken system inspired you, hit that like button to help this story reach others who need to hear it. How would you respond if you witnessed racial discrimination in your community? Would you have the courage to stand up like Lieutenant Washington did, even at personal cost? Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of individuals who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. Share this video with someone who might be fighting their own battle against discrimination and needs to know they're not alone. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one soldier's fight for dignity and justice. Remember, systems only change when enough brave individuals decide that the way things are is no longer acceptable.